أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Alhamdulillah, as we continue with our study of Surah Maryam, Surah number 19, we have reached our fifth session. And we are still in the second part of the surah, which has to do with the story of Maryam alayhi salatu wassalam. Her story starts off in verse number 16, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَرْيَمْ إِذِ انتَبَذَتْ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا مَكَانًا شَرْقِيًّا. And mention the story of Maryam alayhi salam in the Quran, when she separated from her family and she went to the eastern side of Masjid al-Aqsa. فَاتَّخَذَتْ مِن دُونِهِمْ حِجَابًا. She secluded herself from them. فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا رُوحَنَا. So we sent towards her our angel. فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. So we sent towards her our messenger, Jibreel alayhi salatu wassalam, who showed himself to be in the form of a human being. That is perfect human being. قَالَتْ إِنِّي أَعُوذُ بِالرَّحْمَنِ. Now she is alone in her place of worship. She has secluded herself, and now a man is standing in front of her. So she says, قَالَتْ إِنِّي أَعُوذُ بِالرَّحْمَنِ. That I seek refuge in Ar-Rahman in kunta taqiyya. If you have taqwa, then I seek protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَنَا رَسُولُ رَبِّكَ. That I am but a messenger from your Rabb. That I'm not here to harm you, I'm an angel from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I've come here with one message, and that is, لِأَهَبَ لَكِ غُلَامًا زَكِيًّا. To gift you, or to announce to you about the gift of a pure son. She says in astonishment, قالت أَنَّا يَكُونُ لِي غُلَامٌ. She says, how is it possible that I can have a son? وَلَمْ يَمْسَسْنِي بَشَرٌ. When no one has ever touched me. وَلَمْ أَكُ بَغِيًّا. And I'm not an unchaste woman. قَالَ كَذَلِكَ. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam consoles her that don't worry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you a child just like that. قَالَ رَبُّكَ هُوَ عَلَيَّ هَيٌّ. And your Lord says that it is something easy for him. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salatu wasalam without a father or a mother, it is not difficult for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create Isa alayhi salatu wasalam with a mother alone. وَلِنَجْعَلَهُ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. And will make him a sign for us, for mankind. That he is a sign for mankind towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when people see Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, they'll be reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَرَحْمَةً مِنَّا. And he will be a mercy from us. Whoever follows him, they will get the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَانَ أَمْرًا مَقْضِيًّا. And it's something that is already destined and is going to happen. فحملته فانتبذت به مكان قصيا. So she becomes pregnant with him. As we said, the different narrations, whether it happened in a matter of minutes or it took the entire 9 month cycle. So she becomes pregnant with him. فَاتَّبَذَتْ بِهِ مَكَانًا قَصِيًّا. She goes away to a faraway place, right? She doesn't know what to do. So she leaves her people and she goes to a place that is a number of miles away. فَأَجَاءَ الْمَخَاض إِلَى جِذْعِ النَّخْلِ. So with her pains of, of pregnancy, she goes and she takes a rest, or she leans onto a palm tree. قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا. With everything that was going on, she says, I wish that I had already passed away before this. وَكُنْتُ نَسْيًا مَنْسِيًا. And I'm already forgotten. Right? So she's stressed out. She is going through a pregnancy, and she also has to think about the repercussions of what people are going to say. And all of these things is confusing. And she says, had I not have to go through this, and I was something that people forgot about. At this moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an angel who announces, فَنَادَاهَا مِن تَحْتِهَا. The announcement is made from under her. أَلَّا تَحْزَنِي. That don't be scared. قَدْ جَعَلَ رَبُّكِ تَحْتَكِ سَرِيًّا. Look, for one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the water flow from beneath you. Meaning there, take comfort by looking at it and drinking from this water. وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ. And shake this date palm tree, تُسَاقِطَ عَلَيْكِ رُطَبًا جَنِيًّا. Fresh ripe dates will fall upon you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends His angel to comfort her. فَكُلِي وَاشْرَبِي وَقَرِّ عَيْنًا. Eat, drink, and let yourself relax. Let your eyes relax. Cool your eyes. فَإِمَّا تَرَيِنَّ مِنَ الْبَشَرِ أَحَدًا. If you're to see any human being, if any person comes and tries to talk to you about what's going on, فَقُولِي, then say or make ishara towards, indicate towards, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا. That I have vowed with Ar-Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I will fast. فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنْسِيًّا. And I will not talk to anyone today. So this was a pretense. And now we come where she brings the child to the city. She comes back to her people. فَأَتَتْ بِهِ قَوْمَهَا تَحْمِلُهُ. She comes back to her people while she's carrying him. Right? She left for while this was happening. She comes back with the baby. قَالُوا مَا يَا مَرْيَمْ. So the people start saying, قَالُوا يَا مَرْيَمْ لَقَدْ جِئْتِ شَيْئًا فَرِيًّا. You have done something that is beyond imagine. You have done something that is really bad. لَقَدْ جِئْتِ شَيْئًا فَرِيًّا. You have done a very evil thing. Now, they continue to attack her. First, they told her that she did something very evil. Now they say, يَا أُخْتَ هَارُونَ مَا كَانَ أَبُوكِ امْرَأَ سَوْءٍ وَمَا كَانَتْ أُمُّكِ بَغِيًّا. O sister of Harun, your father was not an evil man, nor was your mother an evil woman. Right? So they taunted her by saying that you did something evil. Now they tried to connect her to her parents. That your parents were not evil. This is something that they were using to taunt her. Now, as we know, her father, his name was Imran. Not only was he a very pious person, but he was also one of the imams of Masjid al-Aqsa at that time. So he was a very pious person. And her mother's name was Hannah, and she was also known to be a very noble and pious woman. She is the one who made the vow to give her unborn child into the worship or dedication of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they tried to attribute it, say that your parents are very pious. How could you do something? Now they use the words, Ya Ukhta Harun, O sister of Harun. Now the scholars of tafsir, they explain this in a number of ways. The first is that she had a brother whose name was Harun, who was named after Harun alayhi salatu wasalam. And this was a practice of at that time, that they would name their children after the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is the first. Next is that she was from the progeny of Harun alayhi salatu wasalam. So the first opinion was that she had a brother named Harun, who was named after Harun alayhi salatu wasalam. The second was that she was from the progeny of Harun alayhi salatu wasalam. The third opinion is that in that locality at that time, there was a person whose name was Harun as well, but he was a very evil person. So they tried to attribute They're suspected evil of her with him. That he's an evil person. You are evil just like him, O sister of Harun. That is the third explanation. The fourth is, as the scholars of Tafsir say, that the time between Musa and Harun alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam was a very long time. And it is impossible that she is the literal sister of Harun alayhi salam. Thus, the summary of all of these opinions is that she was a pious woman from the progeny of Harun alayhi salam. So when they say, Ya Ukhta Harun, they said, oh, a sister, a pious sister from the progeny of Harun. Ma kana abuk imra'a saw. Your father was not an evil person, nor was your mother an evil woman. What does she do? فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. She took a vow that she cannot speak that day. So what does she end up doing? She ends up pointing towards the child. فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. Now the people think, when she points towards the child and let the child answer, the people think that they're mocking, that they're mocking them. That she has done this thing, she comes to the child, and now we want answers, and she's pointing towards the child. So they say, قَالُوا كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. They say, how can we communicate with a child who's still in the cradle? They say, how can we communicate with the child who is still in the cradle? Now, Imam Razi, rahimahullah, in his tafsir, he brings a narration that says that the people gathered around Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam, and he started questioning her. And at this point, Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam comes, and he addresses the child directly. That if you were ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if you are sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then testify to your reality. And we see another miracle happens here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that child, Isa alayhi salam, who's a newborn, who is an infant, he's still in the cradle, as a very young child. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the ability to speak. And what does he say? He says in these next few verses, he gives 8 qualities or 8 attributes. He describes himself using 8 qualities, 8 attributes. So first thing he says, قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. The first thing that he spoke, and he said that I am the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I am the special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who was created in a special way. The first answer that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam gives is implying that number 1, I am not the result of zina, and number 2, I am neither God nor am I the son of God. This is the first attribute that he gives, Inni Abdullah. So along with clarifying the allegations against his mother, he clarifies his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I am nothing but the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the first answer that he gives. The second statement that he says, Atani al-kitab, that I was given the book. Now he's an infant and he's speaking. Some of the commentators of Tafsir have deduced from this that he was from one of those Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam who received nubuwah and he received his kitab, his revelation, in infancy. However, this is a far-fetched opinion, and the Jumhur, the majority of commentators, are of the opinion that he was stating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what will happen. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the book. So number 1, he says that I am the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 2, I have been given the book. Now this, by saying Atani al-Kitab, number 1, it proves that he will be a Nabi to come. And number 2, it proves that he is a prophet and he's not God or the Son of God. How? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a God does not receive a book. And one of the first things he says after saying that he's a servant of God is that he received the book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا, and I have been made a prophet. And as we said, he is saying what will happen. What is going to happen is that he will receive the book and he will be a prophet from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the scholars of Tafsir, they explain that in his infancy he spoke. However, at the end of the speech that he gave, everything went back to normal and he was raised, or he grew up like a normal child. Meaning, how they give the analogy with the body parts in the hereafter. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala momentarily will give power and qudra to the different body parts to speak out and testify against a person. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam the ability to speak momentarily, where he cleared up the allegations against his mother and he clarified who he is and what is his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first three things, he said, I'm a servant of Allah, I will receive the book and I'll be made a prophet. Now the fourth thing, he says, وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ. I have been made blessed wherever I go. So what does this mean? مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ. That I am the one who ordains good, that I call towards good and I forbid evil. I am the one who guides those who are astray, and I'm the helper of those who are oppressed. مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ. Or it can mean that I bring the barakah wherever I may be, wherever I am, whether I'm in the belly of my mother and she receives all of the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or later on when I grow up, or later on in life, wherever I am, whatever situation I may be, I have the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the fourth thing that he says, وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ. That I have been made blessed, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given barakah wherever I am. And then, وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. And I have been prescribed or instructed to perform salah and to give zakah مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا, as long as I am alive. So this is the fifth point that he gives in his speech, that I have been ordained, that I have been instructed to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the method of worship is that I perform my salah and I give in charity. So this once again shows his servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا, as long as I am alive. Now, in whatever stage of life I may be, I am to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Under all circumstances, all conditions, I need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accordingly. مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا, as long as I am alive. Now, one point of discussion here is with regards to the life of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And it is the belief of the Ahlul Sunnah that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was raised, and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is in Jannah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in accordance to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how he explains that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back towards the end of time. Now, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he comes back, مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا, as long as I'm alive, so he'll continue to perform salah and give zakat when he comes back. But for the time that he is in heaven, he is absolved from paying zakat and from performing salah, right? Because he's in the heavens, and مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا, as long as he is in this world, he has to perform salah and give zakah. Now, moving on to the different attributes of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam that he gives. So he went 5 so far. Number 6 and 7 have to do with his duty towards his mother. وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made me dutiful towards my mother. And the scholars of tafsir, they highlight here that this is another proof in his speech to clarify his mom's position in front of everybody, to absolve his mother from allegations. What does he say? وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي. I am dutiful to my mother. When mention was made previously of Yahya alayhi salatu wasalam, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَيْهِ. He was dutiful to both of his parents. But here Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is saying, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي, I'll be dutiful, or I am dutiful to my mother. So this shows that he only has one parent. وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. The seventh portion is that I am not someone who is arrogant or someone who is unfortunate. The scholars of tafsir, they have given multiple meanings of jabbar. Number one, someone who is proud and boastful. So Isa alayhi is someone who is not proud and boastful. Someone who attacks and hurts due to rage. This is another definition of jabbar. And Isa alayhi is not someone who attacks or hurts because of rage. And the third meaning of jabbar that they give is one who does not understand the rights of others and does not fulfill the rights of others. So Isa والسلام, says, وَلَمْ أَكُنْ جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made me jabbar, someone who is arrogant, someone who does all of these evils. Shaqiyya, a depriver of good, someone who is disobedient. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made me none of these bad qualities. This is what Isa والسلام, says. That Isa والسلام, highlights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make me arrogant and did not make me foolish. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made me someone who is obedient to Him and someone who is obedient to my mother. And then finally in verse number 33, he goes over the eighth attribute, the last part of his speech. وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيَّ يَوْمَ وُلِدْتُ وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا. And may peace be upon me the day I am born, the day which I pass away, and the day which I will be resurrected. So this is the eighth attribute summarized in this verse. And once again, to ask for dua for protection is another attribute or another proof that he is a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. So, and may peace be upon me on the day which I was born. So the day he was born, protection from all of the calamities and all of the hardships of life. وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ, and protection from the trials and tribulations of the hereafter. وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا, and protection from and peace when I am raised again in the hereafter. As we mentioned previously in the story of Yahya alayhi salam, these are the three crucial points in a person's existence. And this is, he is taught to make dua early on for protection and peace in all of these stages. So this brings us to the end of the third portion of the story of Isa alayhi salam, and how miraculously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him power momentarily to speak as an infant, and he gave this speech talking about the different attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us understanding of the Quran al-Kareem, and that He allows us to make amal on it. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Just a reminder, inshallah, that next week we will not be having this session, but in 2 weeks, inshallah, we'll continue. Jazakallah khair.